Hey gang, welcome back to a new episode of Sales Uncharted. So this is a podcast, and you know this, and I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. I typically try to bring along individuals that are very unique in what they do, have a message that will resonate with my B2B sellers. I typically do not like to bring VPs onto these shows because VPs come in, they tell me about ride-alongs, and they tell me about scripts, and they tell me about forecasts. Now, oh, my life is so difficult, Deepak. That's not our I want to bring people that can actually tell us what's happening in sales, what's changing in sales, and how you, my dear listener, can be better at what you do. I'm really, really, really excited because I met Tushar Khanna, who's joining us today, all the way from Delhi, India. And Tushar and I, when we met, him and I had a great conversation on what's happening in the SDR world. What is it that he does? He actually runs SDR Clinic, which is a training organization. But you know what? I'm going to ask him to tell us more about it. I really felt that his message is very valuable. He's going to go down into the weeds. He can come out from the weeds. And I think that any SDR out there who's trying to be better at what they do, please listen in very carefully. Tushar, welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
Absolutely fine, and thank you for having me, Deepak. And
My
yeah, I think the conversation of the day was absolutely fantastic.
for me it was a revelation because Tushar actually, when we talk about SDRs, right? I would argue that they have a thankless job. They have a job that they do. But just start off asking a very simple question for you. When
Sure.
someone says SDR, what do most people misunderstand about it, and how would you define SDR so that everyone is clear as to your definition and your perspective on this term SDR?
Absolutely. So you're absolutely right, Deepak. When the term comes up SDR, a lot of people actually misunderstand. And the reason being because this term has evolved so much in the last 20-25 years that people are still stuck in the like 10 years ago what SDR used to do. So even I've seen the leaders, the VPs and directors who are leading the SDR team, who are leading the sales team, they still think that SDR is a volume game. SDR is something which is required to kind of mix, so many calls in a day, send out so many emails in a day. And I tell you what, that's the biggest harm anybody could do to their business. Today, SDR is a bridge between the prospect, and the
Yeah.
company or the organization. They are the pipeline builders. They are the revenue architect today. Because the idea is, now the things have changed. Today, they want to kind of look at intent. They want to find timings beyond what your product can solve, or
Yeah.
what your product can
Right.
kind of help them in terms of ROI and other things, right? So that is something which I'm surprised to see that hardly 30-40% of the leaders do understand this. And I think there's a lot to catch up for the rest of the 60% of the lot. So SDR for
Absolutely.
me is somebody who understands the value of each account and dollar attached to that account, if that makes sense to you.
So it does. It does. And here's now comes the best part, Tushar. I've heard people call an SDR a software development rep. I've heard people call them a solution development rep. I've heard people call them a sales development rep. So that people on the call are very clear. Do you have a new acronym for this? What it stands for SDR? Or are we the old school?
So SDR, I think, is just strategic development rep today, not just a sales development rep.
So I like that. And then that's why I asked the question because you talk to people, you'll get different variations, right? And I don't want to argue, but I've actually run compensation. And in compensation, you sometimes have solution development reps. You have service development reps also if you're selling a service business. It can get very confusing for a lot of people. I want to rewind though, Tushar, because you
Mhm.
have made it your life's purpose to create and or let's put it this way, productize great SDRs. What pain do you solve for in the business you do, and why should my listeners listen to you, my friend?
Absolutely, absolutely. So what I solve for both individuals and companies is one thing in common, which is pipeline. Okay, if your pipeline is not being created in a strategic manner, you're actually not just burning cash. Think of it as you're burning your addressable market, right?
Mm,
So
mm,
this is what I solve for people. This is what I solve for individuals and sales leaders that treat every account. See, if you look at the the top 10, 20, 30% of B2B SaaS businesses around the globe, right? They have a limited TAM and they know it, but they still kind of at times digress from, the track or the path
Yeah,
they take to kind of penetrate into these accounts, right? And I
correct.
understand that, it's a pressure job. There's a lot of pressure on leaders, on teams, on sales guys, on revenue guys. But I think the problem which I solve is how to have a better pipeline, a realistic pipeline, which has real dollar value attached to it without burning your addressable market. So that simply means use intent, use everything, but do not forget to use timing and the triggers
And
around that account.
to be honest with you, that's an answer I was not expecting. I thought you were going to give me the traditional pain you solve. I like that because it actually brings home. So, can I say that your sweet
Mhm.
spot is actually helping B2B SaaS companies get better at what they do?
Better at creating pipeline for the sales team. So if you can
Right.
put it that way.
Right. We will put it that way. Anything you want, sir. I will jump as high as you want me to. No issue at all. Now, I have a question for you. We've gone through,
Sure.
and I think that already the audience is getting a feel for what an SDR is. If I were to force you, would you say that
Hmm.
an SDR role is just appointment setting, or is it something deeper? Because you use the word strategic, right? And strategic implies that you look at this in a different way. Could you expand on that a bit more?
Absolutely, absolutely, and thank you for bringing that up because most of the teams, most of the companies, specifically in B2B SaaS, they treat SDRs as somebody who's an appointment setter. So see, it is it is exactly the way you're going to treat that team, that individual. You're going to get the same results out of that person. Simple, right?
Correct.
So treat them
I
as a
agree.
strategic drivers for accounts rather than appointment setters. Trust you me, this might sound a little funny and illogical to people, but meetings are byproduct of having decent and meaningful conversations with the prospects and with the accounts, right?
I,
So
I agree
meetings
with
will
you.
follow. Yeah, the point is to kind of have meaningful conversations. What's in it for them, right? For the prospect, for the persona, for their KRAs, what is keeping them up at nights, right? These kind of things. If you think from that angle, it's not an appointment setting role. It's much more than that.
So let's dig in a bit there. I am
Hmm.
getting this feedback from a lot of people that, Deepak, great salespeople are born. You can't make them. You can only improve
Hmm.
them, but they're born that way. I'm going to throw a challenge at you, Tushar.
Sure.
When you look at the SDRs that you work with, because you have made it your life's mission to focus on a specific role, doing a specific
Absolutely.
attribute on the sales life cycle, right? Are great SDRs born or are they made? Direct question to you. What's your take on this?
So I would say something in the middle of it. To be honest, I'm saying neither they are born nor they are made. It is, see, there needs to be some innate traits which are building blocks for any individual to kind of become not just SDR, even for that matter, salesperson. And I'm sure you understand better than I do, right? So you can always, there are some traits which are important for this role and which makes not just SDRs actually outstanding and outperforming SDRs. So what I mean by that is that somebody who is not hesitant in going and talking to strangers, somebody who is very curious about the fact that what's relevant and what's important for this person I'm talking to, how this business model or this
How
business
this-
generates
Yeah,
revenue, from an account perspective, all of these. So it is 50%, I would say, the hiring at the hiring time. You can look at 50% of these traits. 25% is the environment and the tools which you provide them, and rest of the 20% is continuous learning and coaching and helping them in both good and bad times, because sales is a you know is a
it's
job which will have bad times, no matter how great you are.
but Tushar, you missed the word thankless job. That's typically when I'm talking to salespeople always tell me, "Oh, I'm in a thankless situation. I'm in a thankless job," and I respect that. Monday morning, you want to deal, you're the king of the hill. Wednesday morning, your colleague has quit. His quota then becomes everyone's quota, and you're back to the same run. But let me double click on this one. If you were to
Sure.
choose and look at a SDR that has got some, you like the word innate you use. Innate is a very powerful word. what would you say are the top two innate skills that you think every SDR must be born with or have in them? Because if they don't have that, you can't create a great SDR. What would those two be?
Correct. So I would say curiosity for sure, and I maybe can't find a single word for this thing, but love talking to strangers or talking for that matter. I'm not using the
Bravo.
word extrovert because that means a little different, but I think somebody who loves talking to people um, is good for a sales role or an SDR role, of course.
Got it. And give me one more.
Curiosity. So because
Nah.
that kind of helps you kind of uh, go a long way. I want to say think of it as account research. Think of what's going in the prospect's mind. Think of it at what can help them become better at their job. What depends. Think of his promotion,
Correct.
his anything related to that particular person. Because when you're talking to prospects, one thing I want to add to this question is in my philosophy there is nothing called B2B or B2C. It is H2H, one human talking to another human. That creates the
Bravo.
magic. If
Uh,
if you
did you
understand the
did you see
human.
Tushar, did you see the look on my face when you said there's no B2B, there's B2B? I'm thinking textbook. I'm like, wait a minute, where is he going with this? I like what you said. Here's something I'll tell you that my grandfather told me 50 years ago when I was working in this shop. Today I look back and I'm laughing with Tushar, you just nailed it. He said B2B stands for belly to belly. His way of saying
Mhm.
human to human. I like the human to human because belly to belly sounds obscene, but belly to human sounds absolutely. And you're right. In this age of AI, it can be something that we're going to start missing very soon. I like that. Tushar, I'm going to go back.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to these innate capabilities. We spoke about curiosity, right? And I
Sure.
kind of align with you. In my opinion, a curious salesperson, particularly in the early part of their career, if you use curiosity, it's a powerful weapon. You use curiosity to learn about the customer's business, and you use curiosity when you're a professional to actually slow yourself down also. Remain curious, childlike curiosity. This is very valuable. When we talk about curiosity, you spoke
Correct.
about it like a innate capability. Can we teach people to be curious?
I would say we can help them become a little better, but I think this is something which needs to be there already. I'm gonna say
Yeah, this
I
is
hate
very,
to
very
kind of say
interesting.
this, but that's the
Yeah.
fact. It's the
So this
truth.
is very interesting. So anyone out there who is actually listening into this conversation, I think what you're saying, Tushar, is very powerful based on your experience. And you've been, Tushar, dealing with SDRs, what 15 years of your life now?
Yes, 17 years to be precise.
17 years to be precise. I love precise people. And to me, what you're saying actually has got me leaning forward because I think it's a very powerful point you're making there. Is that if you are not curious, and if you're not curious with an innate skill, we can sharpen your ability to use your curiosity to your favor, but the absence of curiosity will hold you back. This is very powerful, Tushar, because I assume that
Yes,
that also means that when you're hiring and developing and you're helping your customer find an SDR, would you say that this is something? So how do you go about figuring out if someone is curious? Is there an interview for that? Is there like a blood test for that? So, Tushar, to put it crudely,
I wish there could be that there is a blood test for it, but unfortunately there's not. So see, and it becomes even more and much more important when you're hiring freshers, people straight out of college, right? People with zero experience, right? Now, how do you kind of check curiosity thing in them? The point is, let them ask questions, push them to ask questions, and those questions will give you a very clear indication that how their brain functions. If they are asking maybe a little off, but beautiful and questions to kind of find and dig in for more information, I think I think it's there. I think it's
it,
there. So you
it's really
can kind of
interesting.
consider these people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, it's really interesting because Tushar, when you kind of said that curiosity is something that's a lot of people on this call would say that, wait a minute, are you saying that because I'm not curious, therefore? No, I think what you're saying, Tushar, is if you have curiosity in the foundation, the probability that you're going to be great SDR is enhanced substantially. And to train someone that is innately curious is actually a powerful tool because now you're actually giving them something that will take them to the next level. And as you were speaking, I was actually thinking about, Tushar, one of the best SDRs I ever worked with blew my mind, and this you will laugh at this. They actually hired someone
Mhm.
who had been an intern with them, 3 months total experience, and they brought this person on. And this is the call that I'm listening into, and I'm telling you what, Tushar, it blew my mind. This individual actually did not have all the answers, but the way they were curious in understanding from the customer and asking that, it looked like a genuine attempt to have a conversation. And that curiosity,
Correct.
which was necessary because she also doesn't know what's going on, but the way she weaved it in, it was a it became extremely natural to that circumstance, and the way the customer responded, it blew my mind. And that's why actually I realized what you're talking about. Some people have a
Correct.
natural ability to bring and take a conversation forward. And I'm not saying that you're arguing that that holds people back. I think there are ways, but the reality is that if you are not now, here's a question for you though. When you are asking for people to have this innate level of curiosity in it, right? Curiosity, is it open-ended questions? Is it closed questions? Is it active listening? What is this spice pack that you're looking for that creates this ability to say that this person is not just got an innate ability of curious, but also is doing something that makes them the evidence that the curiosity is the right curiosity?
I would say actually all of it. It's a package, right? So without uh, paying attention to the listening piece of it, you won't be able to ask valid and relevant
Valid.
questions, right? So, as we
Correct.
say in the SDR word, the best calls are where the prospect is speaking more than you are speaking. Similarly, the curiosity is when you let them speak, no matter even if they are a little off here and there with the kind of conversation which is on, but the idea is that how do they respond in terms of listening to the conversation and responding to it and asking questions, maybe relevant questions or maybe a bit of irrelevant questions. And we are again we are referring to people with either zero experience or with like 6 months to a 12 months experience. So we can't really and we should not judge them in terms of that how
In
relevant they are
terms,
to the conversation. It should
right.
be how relevant their innate traits are, for an SDR role or for a sales role.
So I'm going to ask you a question. So let's say that I bring to you a basket
Sure.
of people that I want you to train as an SDR, and you now look at this basket and say, "But boss, there's a all three have zero experience." What would you do first
Hmm.
with someone that has zero experience to make them into a great SDR? What SDR skills that are actually trainable would you start with first?
So as I said that the couple of things I'm going to say, if they are somebody who loves to talk, I think that is good enough for a trainer like me to kind of train them and transform them
Right.
into SDRs, right?
Yeah.
Now, when I'm saying SDRs, I'm not really referring to that top 10% or top 20% or top 50% of SDRs, but the idea is that every every individual, be it SDR role, be it sales role, or be it any other walk of life,
Yeah.
everybody has their own trade, and the idea is to be able to generate or make the most of them as an individual is to work on their strength and probably try and make them use their weaknesses the least on the calls in this scenario, right? Use it the
Ooh.
least. Focus on your strength. And because the chances, again, as we say, that when you're reaching out to prospects, it's a high rejection job. Why is it a high rejection job? Because you're calling people out of blue, you're calling them unannounced, you're actually bumping into them, and they have no clue who you are, why are you calling. So the chances of getting a no is absolutely very, very high. And that is the biggest fear, for anyone to get into an SDR job. And that's the reason I've seen people kind of, moving out of this job within the first year itself. Sorry, I'm digressing a bit, Deepak.
No,
But
no,
coming
this is
back
a
to your
good
question,
digression. This is a very good
yeah,
digression. Keep going. Yeah.
coming back to your question, Deepak, I think it is important to kind of play on your strength, right? And that will make you successful. I'm not saying that you will not be. There will be times when you will be exposed. Your weakness will be exposed, but the the lesser number of times you are dragged in that situation, the more successful we are.
More
Is that
success.
making sense, Deepak?
It's making
Do
a
you
lot
hear
of
me?
sense for the. I hear you, Tushar, and I think not just I hear you. I hope everyone else is hearing you. Here's how I will intercept and try to rationalize what you said. Right. I think the message is very powerful.
Sure.
A lot of people look at life as two columns, right? There's a debit, there's a credit. That's like a bank statement. And in the credits, we write all our assets, which is our strengths. Then we look at our liabilities or the areas of weakness or what areas of development, as they call it, and you list that down. And I think what you're saying is very remarkable. Rather than focusing on your weaknesses, you are saying focus on your strengths. Let your strengths mitigate your weaknesses. Your weaknesses will remain, but it's your strengths that you can
Correct.
use to optimize and manage them. I think that's a very powerful message. A lot of people will focus on how do I improve on listening better than or talking less and listening more, because my weakness is that I talk more. But there must be something in your strengths. Your strength is that I'm a highly structured person. If you're highly structured, then how about structuring the conversation in such a way that the customer talks more than you do by asking open-ended questions. So suddenly you see that there's a virtuous loop that you can put into place.
Absolutely.
And I think I would agree with you. As a coach, and I've been coaching people for a long time, I always said to people, your strengths are there. Every performance review you do, people talk about your weaknesses or areas of development. The reality is that your strengths can be used very well. And I've got this little slogan that I print on t-shirts, and I'll send you one to share as well, which simply says, feed your strengths, starve your weaknesses. And I think I found a kindred spirit in you when you said the same thing. I align with that. Now let's keep banging on this drum a little bit more. Right. So
Sure.
I'm an SDR and I'm about to make that cold call. Let me tell you something about me, Tushar. I hate cold
Mhm.
calling. Absolutely despise it. I cannot tell you. But unfortunately, I also know one thing. It's like hating a certain food. But when you get it served on a plate, you have a choice. Either you leave the food or you walk away from the plate. There's a third choice. Eat the bad stuff first and then focus on the good stuff later. That's what I typically do. So for me, I may not like the act of cold calling. And I'll tell you one thing. I'm a very emotional
Mhm.
person. And Tushar, I am already in my mind thinking about the no I'm about to get. So therefore, I liked what you said earlier. If you know that no is part of life, and if you know that the no's will outnumber the yeses, then you just need to make sure that you mentally prepared for that. It's a thankless
Correct.
job. Both of us agree on that, right? Now, let me come bring this home for you. I am now an SDR getting into a cold call, right? I may hate it, I may like it, but I'm getting into cold call. What preparation do you believe actually matters at that point?
It's a great question, and you know what? Everybody talks about it, and what I've seen in the last 17 years that the preparation is you do not and should not over prep. That
Mm,
actually makes you confuse. What you need to do is focus on three things, not more than three things on every call. Because see, you're not going to create a lot of magic on the first call itself. You're not going to close
yeah,
that deal on the first call itself. It is a building block to further conversations, right? To
agreed.
kind of have that impact. So to be able to create that impact, do not prepare for more than three things. The reason being, because if those three things are not creating an impact, he will not let you say the fourth one,
It's I would
right?
agree
On a
with you
cold
on that.
call.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
now, if you prepare for 5 or 6 or 10 things, you're actually not working on your strength. You're not playing the cards right. So focus on three things, which is one should be about the company, the organization, the other should be about the person, and the third thing should be about the pain, which is common loop between the company and this persona. So this
Got it.
covers all the aspect, right? And now, and you rightly said it's a high rejection job, and I would like to add what you just mentioned, Deepak, that do not take it personally. Nobody's rejecting
Yeah.
you. Nobody's hating you. Forget about hating you; they don't even know you. So it's a
Right.
job, and they are actually saying no, or they are rejecting the offer, or the timing, or something else,
Or
but not
something
you,
else. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
Tushar, we need
so
to
so
double in.
completely. Sure.
Sorry, I cut you off, but I want to actually continue this conversation if you don't mind, because I really like what you're saying there. Tushar, for me, I've realized one thing, and it's a very personal statement I'm going to make to you. Twice in my life,
Hmm.
I've felt the need to just leave sales. And the second time I did leave sales permanently, right? And I went into sales
Oh,
operations. This burnout that I felt was because I was taking things too personally. When I was waiting for a response from a customer, my brain was jumping to this reality that have they decided to go with someone else? Because people tell you, right? If they ain't talking to you, they're talking to someone else, right? That's what they tell us. And I let that get to my head. So if I would ask you for some advice in terms of knowing SDRs and the fact that they are doing cold calls where the rejection ratio is very high, as well as the fact, and to be honest with you, one of the reasons why I hate cold calls is because I sometimes feel like I've been verbally abused or I feel, awkward. I just felt that I've disturbed someone or the person has expressed himself. I've had one of my worst calls, which I typically no, don't carry on talking to people, is when someone says to you, and this is true, who are you? How did you get my phone number? I'm picking the kids up. Do you mind not calling people when they're picking kids up from school? And you're like, how would I have known, ma'am? But you don't do that. I also then stopped talking when I realized in a mood like that, I'm not going to get to those three things that you spoke about preparation wise, right? Let me ask you a
correct.
question then. I've been told, and I instinctively agree with it, if you are not able to use those three things that you just mentioned within the first 30 seconds, you can kiss your chances goodbye. Is that true, Tushar?
I would say, I would say yes. Okay, and I would say no. So,
Mm.
this is a very thin line, right? So maybe I'm digressing a bit from the question again, Deepak. But let me
Go
tell
ahead.
you with my experience. You talk about first 30 seconds. I think the question should be repackaged into what happens in the first 10 to 15 seconds, because
Okay, keep
that
going.
is the thing, right? That is the thing. So the biggest mistake which we do as cold callers or SDRs or whosoever is cold calling is that as soon as we get a connect, as soon as we have the right person on the call, we want to say everything we wanted to kind of tell that person or share with that
Mm,
person.
mm.
That's the biggest mistake. You are prepared for the call, not the other person. He wasn't even expecting your call, right? So how do you know, get him into a conversation? How do you strike a conversation? So that comes with ice breaking first thing first. If the first 10 seconds you can do the ice breaking without talking about business is the best thing any SDR can do. So, getting to the business conversation without talking about the business is the best thing to do. I might be confusing a lot of people listening to this podcast, but
Yeah,
you got to break. See, everybody thinks about the cold call, on an average cold call is about for 3 minutes or so, correct?
yeah,
But
yeah.
these 3 minutes can be again broken down into five or six different components.
Components.
And
Yeah,
once you
which
start, yes, once you start focusing on each component as one thing, which is again one trade or one piece of the cold call where you need to make yourself better and better and better and better with time, with practice, right? That's what makes you a star. That's what
got
makes
it.
you, in the top 10%, not just in your company, not just in your city or country. Actually, I'm
Yeah.
saying globally.
Let me ask you a
So,
question because you said
please.
you use this word practice, practice, practice three times, right? And I think that's for emphasis because practice, practice, practice means you ought to do it again, do it again, do it again. Tushar, how if I were to ask you direct questions, sir? I'm not a big fan of scripts. And I'll tell you why, because I think that scripts fail
So
you. But
now,
at the same time, I do know one thing: scripts will most likely fail someone. How do you say this at the novice level, early level? But scripts also help you shape a structure, right? And from that structure, you can build greatness. How big a role do you think scripts play in the role of an SDR, particularly when they are starting their role and their careers? Are scripts as important as the world tells us, or do you think that scripts can also constrain people sometimes the way I believe? Where do you stand on that script?
so first of all, I think Deepak, the question before this question, arises is what is a script? Because that again is a very broad
Good,
term.
good point.
It
Very
is
good
a,
point.
so for a product which is about $10,000 as an ACV or ARR, whatever you want to
Yeah,
call it. Let me put
yeah,
it in a simpler manner. ticket size. Okay, if it's a
Ticket
ten
size.
thousand dollar ticket size, your script would more look like a feature list. Okay, so for a product which is about $100,000, ticket size, you would have a different script, probably different
Hmm.
script for different personas within one organization.
Agreed.
Typically, right? And typically, a script is also a script when you're selling $500,000 worth of product or service, you know. And so it is important for us to kind of know that what is a script. Script can give you information around the product or the service which you are selling.
Yeah.
Okay, but you need to learn you need to depend upon your the market awareness, the persona awareness. You need to put yourself in their shoes and
True.
start thinking about how to talk in a language which matters most to this person. Use terminologies and jargons which this person is used to listening or speaking day in day out between 9 to
Yes.
6 in office. So I would say script is something you take. You definitely take all the good things from the script, but you do not become scriptive. It
I
has to
like that.
be combination of human touch which creates a magic even before you start talking about scripts or anything. So I'm not going to say it is not important. I'm not going to say that it is totally important, but you decide again. Play on your strength. Use the script as
You.
much as you need to, you want to, and you need to rely on. That's it. But your real strength is you, not the script.
If I understand you, Tushar, I think there's a very powerful message in what you just shared here. Start from scripts, but don't use the script as a crutch, because a crutch is going to slow you down. At some point, you need to figure out what do you need the crutch for? Why are you even limping in the first place? And that's self-awareness, right? Knowing yourself and your strengths. I really like this conversation because what we're now doing is we're actually saying, looking at scripts, what is the script was the first question you had, right? And typically when we talk about scripts, we're literally talking about the, you said, let's start with an icebreaker, right? So there's a script for that also. Hi, and this is a script that someone used on me once, Tushar, which worked, by the way. Until this day, I've not figured out why. Maybe you can help me make sense of this. This is how it works. Call. Hi, this is Arvind. This is a cold call. I really hope you're okay with me having a cold call with you right now. If okay, can I tell you about this product? I'm really excited about it. So now I'm very intrigued with this roundabout. But okay, so I say to him, okay, yeah. So it's a cold call. Okay. So what are you selling? He says, no, no, I think what we need to talk about is what you want like to buy. Now at this point, I'm confused. I said to him, I'm not buying anything. He says, let's establish that. And I just sat there, Tushar, trying to figure out what kind of a script did he follow. And I tell you one thing, I just realized as I listened to you, he started maybe off with the script, but when he saw where I was going, he followed me and then he led me.
Correct.
And I think that's the maturity, whatever that guy did that day. He did manage to get and secure with me more time. And we ultimately did buy his product. But just the way that he clicked and the way he kept shifting, the way he kept responding to me, told me he's not looking at his screen and saying, if Deepak says this, then say that. If he says this, then say that. And I think there's some experience also that came into play. But now, Tushar, how, and one thing I want to check with you is, I've noticed one thing about good SDRs. They tend to learn from the mistakes very fast, very quick. And when they see
Correct.
a script failing or they see a script passing, they tend to figure out a way to double down on what works. What would your advice be to people that are learning and they learn something good? How do you then make it part of your DNA to keep doing that again and again and again? Is that you, do you record yourself? Do you write it down? What exactly happens that makes it really powerful?
Okay, sure. So first thing first, I think it is a very interesting conversation which you just shared, Deepak. And in the SDR world, this is called pattern interrupt. When you do not sound like most of cold callers, your chances of you know succeeding on that call are very high. Okay,
Right, got it.
so now on this call, Deepak wasn't thinking about your guard wasn't up. Your you
Spot
were
on.
totally, yeah, you were totally blown away by the fact that hey, this guy is absolutely honest. Either he is, absolutely, maybe his first day at work,
Yes,
and he's
yes,
being so
yes.
honest, right? Or could be able to say, "What is this?" I'm going to say, "That's I have not heard somebody calling me and saying something like this to me." So this is a very interesting piece, which becomes even more important in today's world, because let's say in the US, any top executive at any decent company gets
Yeah.
about no less than 25, 30 cold calls a day. So
Mhm.
pattern interrupt is something which is which is a mandatory thing in my course. Okay,
True.
so it is leading to conversations, right?
And I think it's also important because the pattern interrupt is one of the best tools to use when you are trying to survive the first 15 seconds, to put it crudely, right, Tushar? Otherwise, what else do you have at your disposal? I think this is a great conversation. I like that. Tushar, as I start getting a bit more personal and understanding your thought process, I want to ask you a question. You've been at this game for a long time now. You started as an SDR 17 years ago. You've now made it a life mission to educate more SDRs. If I understand, you're running an organization called SDR Clinic, right? And people can visit sdrclinic.com. Is that correct, sir?
Correct, correct.
Right. So now, question for you. Let's assume that I can give you the power to teleport yourself in back in time, right, Tushar? And you walk into a point where you actually walk into you yourself sitting at a table, just finding out that you've got your first SDR role. What would you tell your persona at that particular point, that you have now figured out that if I had known this earlier, it would have made a lot of difference? What would you tell your avatar that is now entering that role at that point, based on the fact that you know so much? What would advice would you give that person?
It's a great question, Deepak, first of all, and I think it applies to all the experienced SDRs today,
Yes,
right? What
absolutely, it
what
does.
what would they have done, when they started, back in the day? So I would say that two things which comes to my mind talking to you, Deepak, and trust you me. Let me repeat it. It's a very interesting question, and there could be like 10 different answers to it based on my 17 years of experience. But I think top two things are, I would never spray and pray, because I am I am not doing good to the organization. I'm actually harming the organization by killing my addressable market.
Mm,
Even if I mean, so people say that you have tons and tons of people to sell to, specifically when you see in
beautiful.
the B2C category. But
Yeah.
think of it, you're not leaving a good impression even in B2C. Then, you know, if Deepak is not having a good conversation with somebody calling from T-Mobile, what kind of image
What kind of?
would you have in your mind about T-Mobile? Why don't companies think of it as brand reputation, right? It's not just about, you know,
Yeah.
so it takes a lots of money, time, effort, and whatnot to kind of create a brand out there. Do not take it lightly. Number two, I would say, I would I would not completely rely on my script. I would use my intelligence, and I know that, and I'm specifically saying intelligence and not experience, because I don't have any when
Because
I'm
you,
starting,
yeah, exactly.
right?
You're starting. You
So,
nailed it. Yes.
right. Now everything goes back to when I said that, innate traits. I've been hired for this job because there is something in me which is a fit for this job, right? Let me
Yeah.
try and actually play with it and see what's my strength, what's working well for me, and what's not working well for me. The sooner I'm able to figure it out, and the only way I'll be able to figure it out, by not 100% relying on the script.
Understood.
So
Understood.
maybe start with 30% on your own and 70% scripted, but start doing that from day one, or week one, or at least the first month. It is important. Any which way, I'm going to say, even if you are the best cold caller, even if you are Jordan Belfort, you will still would hear no, no, not interested, buzz off, all this thing, right? So the idea is to get emotionally detached from all these rejections, and figure out what is making you successful. And the sooner you're able to figure it out, I think it will gonna take you places. I'm gonna say from SDRs to whatever you want to
To
become
whatever
in
you want to. I have a question for you. And I know that people listening are thinking to themselves, you just simplified this way too much. You can't just talk yourself to mental resilience. You just can't talk yourself out of a bad episode or feeling bad for yourself. There's something earlier you said also, your identity. As long as you protect your identity, you are safe, which means
correct.
that your role may be different, your identity is different. Your role is on fire, doesn't mean that you're on fire. But if I were to talk about mental resilience, what habits do you think, or what thought process, what mental state do you need to be where you can process your losses as just being data and nothing more than that? How does one achieve that state of nirvana?
Yeah, uh, I would say again. I would say, see, do not take away anything when you're going back home. First thing first, okay. Now, when it comes to that, if I understood your question correctly, Deepak, I think look everything in the data form. Your wins, your losses,
Your losses.
your
Yep. Yep.
your good days, your bad days, your good experience, your bad experience, your good customer, your bad prospect, because bad practice prospect never became your customer, right?
Never became the
So,
customer. Correct.
right. So the idea is that treat this as a job, right? Look at the data, learn from the data. And I think there was a question from you which I could not answer, and we kind of went ahead with something else. It is very important for an SDR to record their calls, and most importantly, listen to their at least a couple of bad calls every single day. And if
I would
somebody
agree
tells me
with
that
you.
I don't have like a couple of bad calls today, then I think you didn't call much,
E- e-
because there's no way that you would not have two, three, or four bad calls in a day.
Tushar, spot on. Anyone listening, I think this is something very important. Tushar, I've been selling for ages and I'm a sales coach, but I assure you, when I am with a customer and I go back to my calls, I actually use Fathom, and Fathom actually is integrated to the Sandler methodology. We actually switch it on, and I actually ask myself, and I ask Fathom, and it tells me, this is where you failed. This is where you spoke too much. This is where you missed the opportunity to do this. And it's really interesting. We think that the more experience you have, therefore, no. Even with lots of experience, sometimes you really need to go back and look at, because there's opportunities for improving all the time, all the time. And I think this
Absolutely,
is a very
absolutely.
important point. I like that. Now, if I were to start wrapping up, right, and ask you a simple question,
Mhm.
what exactly do you see yourself doing in the next, let's say, for the rest of 2026 in terms of growing your business? What are your game plans? Just tell us a bit more about what's happening on your mind. You've been at you started SDR Clinic. When was that, Tushar?
Pretty recently, Deepak. So
Yeah.
I recently hung up my corporate boots. Like to be precise, 2nd of March 2026 was my last day at work.
Oh, that's very precise.
And
Yep.
honestly, yeah. And even after so much of experience, and after having trained like I think more than 400 SDRs over the last 10 years since I became manager, and then
Yeah.
eventually started leading the entire demand generation outbound function, right?
Yeah.
So, and with that, so I realized something that, that the uncertainty piece is something which going to remain with you all your life. I was
Yeah.
uncertain about my first call. I was uncertain about my first interview. I was uncertain about my, first motorbike ride or whatever. And after 17 years of experience, and after having trained 400 people, I was still a little uncertain about this, whether I'll be able to pull this off
I,
or not, you
it's
know.
this is so powerful, so powerful. I think being uncertain is a part of life. You
Correct.
post a call, I can say I was very certain in the outcome, but when you start a call, there's this uncertainty to it. I respect that, right? Now, with your SDR clinic that you're expanding, what is your game plan? What type of customers are you looking for? Who do you think you help the best?
Sure. Absolutely. So, see, I help, as I mentioned, both individuals and companies. Okay, specifically focusing on B2B SaaS. okay, in here in India, and I also work with a couple of founders in the US as well. There,
Yeah.
so what I offer is mainly three things. One, I train people, and honestly, Deepak, I hate to call this piece of my whatever you want to call it as business, because this is a mission, not a business for
Mhm.
me. I make
Got it.
money, and I have two other business streams, which is, for example, I just closed a consulting business today with one of the founders. They have this very interesting AI enabled product which they are taking. They already have like ITC and Procter and Gamble as their customers. So I'm setting up
Right.
their business there. I make money very proudly because I'm selling all my
Absolutely.
experience.
Yep.
Number two is when I train people at organizations. Now the company goes from the organization's pocket. So I do not
Got it.
hesitate when I ask money from them. On the third thing is when I train people who really want to, people straight out of college want to start their sales career, right, at B2B SaaS sales or B2B
Yeah.
organizations. I don't like to make money from them, so I charge. I'm proud to say that I'm the most affordable SDR trainer in the country,
Yeah.
right? And typically, I work with B2C SDRs to help them transition into B2B. Plus, I also train B2B early SDRs who have gotten there, but they
Oh,
lack
yes.
kind of the modern way of kind of targeting and modern way of kind of making inroads into the large accounts.
Yeah. It's like a
Yes,
tune-up. You're available for tune-ups also. Someone who's got experience but wants to now see what works, what doesn't work. How much? Wait, I just realized. I was going to ask you how much does personality have to do with it, but then we've had a good debate on that. Let me ask you the last final question for this round. Where can people find you and how can they communicate with you, sir, to understand your services better and potentially bring you in to help them with a specific problem that they want solved in the SDR space?
absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn for last probably 18 years already. So,
Yeah.
go find me on LinkedIn. It's Tushar Khanna, and you'll easily be able to find me. My company's name is SDRclinic.com. It's a pretty simple name. Anybody
It's
who's
such a,
interested in
I
this,
must congratulate you on that, Tushar. When I first came across your name and I was visiting your website, I said to myself, he doesn't know it, but finding something so easy is going to be a boon for you. And I think you're milking it. You have to. SDRclinic.com, ladies and gentlemen, is where Tushar's business is on display. I think there's a
okay,
contact form there also to reach out to you, Tushar. Otherwise, you said
there's a
you're
contact
available on
from,
when I
there's a WhatsApp number as well because I like to talk to people, so you can reach out to me on my
perfect.
WhatsApp.
So for me, when we release this podcast and we release this in the form of a newsletter also, I will, Tushar, be tagging you in any case on LinkedIn so that you're able to pick up the conversation. And as people comment, feel free to also comment back to them. But Tushar, I've really enjoyed this
Absolutely.
conversation because you know what? A lot of people think that selling is selling is selling. The reality is that selling depends from role to role. And the SDR role is one of the worst thankless ones. And two, the rejection ratio in cold calling is far higher than any other ratio you will ever see in any role on the planet for that matter. I can say that to you, Tushar. I actually
Absolutely.
believe
Yes.
you ain't seen no yet until you've done the work of an SDR. Put yourself in their shoes. I think you spoke about empathy and you spoke about trust earlier, right? It's not easy. And I think this is very why I recommend to people finding specialists like Tushar who are very focused on a, what do you call it, Tushar? I don't think this is a thin sliver, right? This is a very thick sliver, a lot of work happening. But instead of saying that I help ISRs, I help this, you're saying I help SDRs. The business is a lot. I will help you get better at how you address your time, how you run your processes, how to think strategically, not just how to handle a cold call or how to write an email. And I think that's your value proposition. Tushar, I'm grateful for you joining us on this call. More
Thank
conversation
you
in the
so
future,
very
I
much
hope.
for having me.
But to the listeners, there's a lot for you to unravel here. I really hope this makes anyone listening a better SDR or allow you to appreciate what an SDR does so that next time when you're screaming and shouting, then how could you not get me my meeting? You think differently about that. Tushar, take care. Great talking to you.
Thank you, Deepak. Thank you once again for having me. Have a good one.
My pleasure.